Well, uh, Good morning, everyone. Namaste, and welcome to our second webinar session where we are unpacking the real deal and the real ways in which DPDA is kind of looked upon. Uh, Today's very interesting session. Of course, we have the great Butchi Babu sir with us to kind of help us to do a lot of deep dives. But also, we chose this to be a very specific domain in terms of how cooperative banks will think and how they have to work. So before I do anything, let me just introduce to all of you. Definitely, I don't think so anyone is there in the webinar who doesn't know who Butchi sir is. But in case that 0.01% who don't know about him, Butchi sir is a senior retired bank officer. He grew to the role of CIO. Um, and now today, he plays a super influential role by being part of the IT advisory and steering committee in Punjab Sind Bank. He's in IT strategy committee in NABARD. He sits on the NABARD advisory board for IT, as well as he works with RBI through their commercial advisory committee of IFTAS. Sir has been speaker for all the years and a moderator where he hosts a lot of forums in RBI, NABARD, IDBRT, and IBM. And definitely, if you follow him in LinkedIn, you will be seeing he speaks amazingly on cybersecurity, IT governance, AI, blockchain, data analytics. Beyond all of these, he's also a terrific mentor. He guides startups, and we are very lucky to have him as our mentor as we, cross through this particular DPD journey. Sir, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and you can proceed. You can go ahead. No, you meant to say I'll go or you want to talk on something?
No, sir. I think the floor is open for you to kind of share your
sweet.
thoughts on the DPDA. Then I'll go into the agenda.
Very good morning. Very good morning to all. I know it's thank you so much for sparing your time on a weekend, especially which is very precious for the banker and our VFSA guys. Thanks to Redacto for giving me this opportunity to interact with you. It's more of a I can share to share my views and also share the main areas from other people or their views also. So then when we come to DPDP Act is being talked more like a white elephant. Everybody talks about it. They say like no, when an act is there, act says let there be Ram Raj. But how to bring that? We know what to do, but how to do part of it we'll cover more today because that is always a question mark. How do you interpret the act? How do you really interpret? That is more important. Why I'm worried about when I'm talking about data, personal data protection, data privacy is in the DNA of all the banks and financial institutions. Because thanks to the regulators, right in 2016 itself, they came out with the bare minimum security requirements, cyber security requirements for all banks, and they made mandatory. Nowadays, I don't see any difference between a bank, a public sector, private sector bank, or a cooperative bank, or an NBFC. Initially, the other segments did not have the same rules. Now, the same security rules, same governance rules are applicable to all the banks. Nevertheless, the focus will be more on about the cooperative banks as we go by. But I'll tell you what is this data protection. Why I'm worried all of a sudden about data protection. Does it mean my customers will be worried whether banks did not have to have any data protection? I say we have spent millions on data protection. Nowadays, we spend more on cybersecurity than sometimes on the hardware, normal software and all, because banks have built fortresses around their data centers. They wanted to protect the data. Then why all these acts are coming? Because I'm already we have spent millions. We are protecting the data within the data center. Why I'm worried? The issue is you are the trustee of the data of the customer. How are you using it? Are you casual? Are you carelessly giving to everybody and making me vulnerable? Right. So here the issue is the idea mooted somewhere in the year 2018, where the Krishna Commission has initiated this data protection bill. Later, very later, almost in 2023, we came out with a bare data DPDP Act, which is not kind of really powerful. Now in November 2025, that is where the time start kicking now. They gave a deadline. In November 2025, they come out with about 22 rules. Correct me, Shashank, if I'm not, some 22 rules they came up. And now rule is there. It is easy. I remember in whenever a direction comes from the regulator, it is like no people find it difficult to understand sometimes because it's not that they are equipped to. For example, the latest example I'll give you in February 2021, they said whenever you create any product, mobile or internet, any product, digital product, you follow these 100 and odd rules. No, now the banks are at loss. Then that, of course, I'm fortunate to address 2, 3 banks to clarify what it means. You have a direction, what is it and how to implement. So today's session, I am sitting with one of the, very enterprising, with excellent backgrounds of Google, Microsoft, and who worked abroad, the entire team worked abroad, and they'll be telling us, okay, so we have spent a lot of money on DLP, that is data leakage prevention. We don't allow data to for your staff to remove or data should not leave your data center northwest, east, west, south, east, west, any kind of traffic we're trying to protect. Okay, but the issue is it's not about that. My customers' data. I'm the earlier. I remember I was manager in Ahmedabad. Only 1 year, less than 1 year I worked. Out of my 30 years, 5 years in the bank, not even 1 year I worked. That is one of the years I worked in the branch as a manager. So when I manage some LIC guy, ICIC Prudential guy sits outside my cabin, or somebody else selling mutual funds. So what is happening? They are picking data from me. For example, you are Mr. Hanmat Reddy. You never allowed me to share my data. I am sharing data with all the, even now also, whoever partners we are sharing data. With the data privacy and all, without their consent, you cannot do anything. The very crux of it is, you do anything, but after taking consent on it. This is a basic thing which was not there. Now it is mandatory. Otherwise, there are penalties, huge penalties. Then are we the first to do it? No. Long GDPR has come. Then you have your own California Act has come. China has its own, Canada has its own data protection. Ultimately, customer data is not to be shared without specific consent and for the period for which he gives this one. Okay. This is how it is. Now, okay, sir. You said there are 22 rules. How do I go about it? Okay. How do you go about it? Now, what do I do first? I'm saying whenever I take a cyber security session, I said, what are you protecting? You should be clear about it, right? Here I am protecting data. I'm clear about data. Do I know where it is? Do I know where else it is? To go to a data center, there are hundreds of servers. Maybe in a big bank where I work, at least 200 will be there. Now, some data is replicated in different places. Suppose I'm a core bank, a normal savings bank customer. I open a internet banking, probably the database is different. I open a mobile banking, there may be a different case. Then I take backups, I put somewhere else. Then I'm partner with somebody, I have another database. That means same data is there in multiple places. Why I'm talking about is I'm not addressing you as customers. I'm not addressing you as we call it data principles. Am I correct, Mr. Shashank? The users are data principles. So here, let me quickly say data principle is who is having the data. The producer is the banks most of the time, and there is a data processor who uses the data. Okay, so we have some different categories. Now my job is to find out where else I have implemented. Earlier I was putting everywhere. Okay, if you're a kind of banker working in IT, you know that whenever I want something, I pull some data from the table, put it in directly in the local server, and start processing that. Right, that kind of thing. Sir. So first thing is you discover the data. The second thing is how do we manage the consent? So what they say is take the consent for each customer, consent management, right? That means before sharing data, the customer should give you consent to share for what purpose and whatever will be the purpose. What happens if you don't do that? The penalties are as high as 250 crores. When it comes to GDPR, it is 1.2 billion euros, right? And Meta has paid it only in 2023. And somebody else has paid, another big guy has paid 1.2 million, 1.2 some million. So people are paying in other countries. We also have to pay. So the bankers, we should be very clear about where the data resides, how to protect it, okay, and how to the major challenge I see is we talk as we go by obtaining consent for all the customers. My customers, most of them may not be having mail IDs. They may not be having some, in some cases, mobile numbers, government accounts. How to get the consent? That is another challenge. So now for this, we need a structured approach. We have only 18 months to go. The clock started ticking in November. We have completed 3 months already. All the BFSI bankers have to complete by what is that? April 2027 or May? May.
May, sir.
May
27.
2027 we should be completing. The major part will go in data, a kind of data identification or what you got, discovering the data and then consent management. Okay. So by now, this is very critical in the sense there will be penalties for one penalty is for leakage of data. Second penalty is not complying with the regulator. That there can be bigger penalty. So all of you know, even a small amount of penalty in my balance sheet is a big stigma for the bank. So to avoid all that, let us not make it too complicated. First thing is find out data where it is, try to obtain consent from the various concerned. That is the major thing. Wherever you cannot, take the mitigation measures, okay, and build a platform. What I am looking at is many banks are averse to cloud because I have been advocating cloud. Even the government is coming. RBI is coming with a cloud. Fortunately, I'm part of that to some extent, and MeitY also encourages. So it is the time. Fortunately, most of the cooperative banks they like the cloud. When I want to a bigger turnaround time, quicker turnaround time, I need a cloud. I work for more than almost 14 banks. 14, at least 10 of them are public sector. To procure a server and hardware, it ideally takes 6 to 9 months. Hardware and software, you understand that, and to install. So to meet this deadline, and don't let him. I'm not advocating for any vendor, but best way is to see that whether you have already built in kind of infra, go for it. But otherwise, the cloud is the quicker solution. You go for it. And with this, I'll stop. As we go by, I'll keep on adding my views. And I thank you, Shashank. You can take it forward.
No, thanks, sir. That was great. I think initial information what you gave us. Before jumping into this, just want to introduce myself also. My name is Shashank Karincheti. I am the co-founder for the company called Redacto. We are one of the only privacy full stack company. That means company dedicated only to solve the privacy regulations and make every entity, every bank in the country compliant with DPDA. A quick 20 seconds glance that our session will be.
Shashank, I have a small question.
Sure, sir.
I know redaction.
Yes.
What is Redacto? What is it? Has it got something to the security?
Absolutely, sir. So me and Amit, Amit is the co-founder. As you said, he was ex-Microsoft, Google, and he was CTO in Grab and Ola. And I was part of Razer and Deloitte. So when we met, I think the biggest problem, what we understood is right to forget.
Right to
Any
forget,
system, because we have worked in massive systems in engineering, we know that the process of storing is the easiest piece. But the whole agenda for us is to kind of first introduce, sir has given a very good background about what's exactly is DPDA. We will try to understand in 5-6 minutes what are the key wordings, key challenges which DPDA brings into play. And we did a very interesting work here in Redacto, where in November 2025, RBI also released revised versions of master directions for everyone, commercial banks, SFBs, payment banks, UCBs, RRBs, SFBs.
Yeah.
So what we did, we went through all the documentation, what affects cooperative banks, and kind of mapped that with DPDA. Fantastic outcomes is what we understood. We will be sharing that in a couple of minutes in this presentation with all of you on how RBI already thinks way ahead to solve problem. And the fourth area is what we'll cover is how do you convert the entire requirements of Regulations Act and the MITI's BRD into your day-to-day operations. We will not let you go without giving you your 90-day roadmap, no matter who you are, even if you're from an analyst to the CEO of the bank. Everyone has a role to play in this journey because personal data touches every employee of this bank. Finally, I am hoping I cover this very fast so that we also have the Q&A open. Amazing questions. Me and Sarah are here to answer. And if we are not able to answer within the time, absolutely offline, we'll connect with you to take care of your questions. Without delay, let me start. Why this matters now? 2023 August, the DPD Act was kind of enacted by the Parliament, but it took straight more than 2 years to kind of get the final rules. Jan 25 draft rules came out. A lot of discussions happened with MITI, or a lot of people who are there in the room can also vouch. RBI did a great job by also having the
Yeah.
policy team discuss it. In my previous company, when I was there, they reached out to understand what exactly the problems if they go ahead. A lot of us gave us a lot of feedback to MITI and RBI. In November 25, 14th, the rules finally came out. And they gave us 18 months to everyone. Every single entity which is processing personal data in this country has to abide by the DPD Act and rules. And they said November 2027, as Sir was saying, it's exactly 15 more months from today for anyone to kind of understand the act, understand, dissect the rules, go through the policies, change the SOPs, and implement them and be live in next 15 months. It's gonna be massive, massive undertakings for institutions which are on-prem, which are on cloud, which have more than 400, 500 downstream systems, which have hundreds of vendors, because the DPDA doesn't only cover what data you have inside your ecosystem. Well, it also covers every vendor who touches your customer's personal data. Interestingly, RBI's November 25 guidelines, the directions which came for cooperative banks. And when I said RBI did an excellent job, the reason is the digital lending guidelines which came earlier, the cards, the outsourcing, and the KYC, all of these have now been rejigged to kind of give the DPDA flavor into that. So that means if you are taking care of RBI's November 25 guidelines, typically our guess is 60% you're already there. I will tell you what is our thesis and how this is going to work. But there is a different angle to this. And the angle is RBI has now done something fantastic and what we call as embedded privacy. That means RBI has embedded privacy inside the regulations now. So basically, DPDA cannot be a standalone requirement by any institutions.
That is privacy by design.
Exactly, sir.
Yeah.
We will just touch base upon, in case you are very new to DPDA, there are certain terminologies. If you have worked somewhere in GDPR, Srijan, which the way I did, for example, GDPR uses very different terminologies like controller, because you control the data as a company. Subject, DPDA says you're a subject. The Indian government, MITI, changed this entirely. They said, no, you are a fiduciary. The fiduciary, the one who decides how they want to use the personal data. And they said, hey, look, they are no longer subjects, but they are principals, which legally means that.
Shashank, principal is anybody, any account holder, borrower who is a customer of the bank, kind of.
Yes, sir.
That is one of the
Exactly.
examples. Fiduciaries are the banks, basically, in the present scenario, the current situation.
So anyone who determines the purpose on how they're going to use the personal data is fiduciary. Because there's a lot of confusion, I think, is going on in terms of companies trying to understand, are they processors or are they fiduciaries? Yeah. Suppose in case the company is deciding, I'm going to use this data for processing in this particular problem statement, no matter what, they are the fiduciaries. Yeah. In our case, the cooperative bank is a fiduciary. Anyone who processes your data, your CBS vendor, card processors, loan service providers, outsourced IT, everyone is data processors. And there is also a concept of consent manager, which has been introduced by MITI in this, wherein they have also introduced that consent manager platform and consent manager software, two different concepts. But without going much more detail into that, because that will be another 2 hour
Yeah,
session on how that
correct,
gets
correct.
solved, I'll just say that Redacto is a consent manager. They are opening up, MITI is opening up the licenses. Whenever the license comes in India, there'll be majority of the companies will be applying for license of consent manager. Specifically, by the way, who becomes a
Yeah,
consent manager, how consent manager license has to be there, detailed rules and act has been given. Independence has been given a lot of weightage.
yeah,
That means consent manager cannot be one who has a conflict of interest.
yeah. Yeah. I think I'm seeing some questions. Mr. Agarwal had a question. I'll definitely answer that, sir. There are many people like credit bureaus. You talked about credit bureaus. What is their role? We'll talk, sir. Thanks for the question. Go ahead, sir. We'll
Sure,
address that. Yeah.
sure. Just to take a step back, sir, in another 20 seconds, I want to cover this consent. We have spoken a lot about consent, and people are hearing. But why does consent is very much different in India under DPDA when you compare this with global regulations? Let me give you a background about GDPR. The word called legitimate use case has been, quite openly used in terms of how, data can be
Yes.
used. In case of fraud risk management system runs and the risk data for transaction monitoring, if someone is covering, that goes and falls under legitimate use case. That means the data can be used typically without seeking any permission. But our act did away with all this thing. They said no matter what you do, there needs to be consent for every
Yeah.
single personal data element, which has to be attached to a purpose. If you seek consent, if you give enough information on how the data will be used, which falls under these five tenets. What are the five tenets? And beautifully, the act has been written along with the rule. You cannot bundle this. You cannot say that, hey, look, you can only open the bank account if you allow me to do marketing to you, or if you allow me to do a cross sell of a credit card or insurance. Second, it has to be very, very specific. Purpose has to be clearly called out. Providing of services, opening an account may be a purpose. Product analytics will be a purpose. Marketing will be a purpose. That means each purpose has to be called out in line with the personal data whenever a customer is touching you first time. Before all of this happens, a clear notice in 22 languages plus English has to be presented. So we were discussing about this, right? That I think
Yeah,
when
that's a
when
great
when
thing because
yeah,
somebody should be able to understand this. I cannot give consent in some other language which I don't understand. And that is not valid also. Like even in a bank,
correct.
when we are signing documents in English, most of the rural places, for example, in Marathi, they say Vachun Dakal. That is, it was read to me and I have understood kind of thing. So that multilingual thing, definitely the consent is a great idea. Yeah.
Right, sir. I think the whole point of also of the government was that uh, anyone, a tribal woman in Bastar who wants to go to a branch should now be informed that every particular element of data, what is being consumed in her own language, and she gives a consent. There cannot be there cannot be pre-ticked boxes. That means it has to be unambiguous. You cannot open up and say, hey, look, I have already ticked for you. Don't worry, we will take. Not possible. Finally, the language, the notice, and the response by the customer has to be affirmative. It should be in the positive, clear tone. That means no longer anyone can hide behind legal jargons that if you don't do this, this will happen. All of this kind of has been now taken away. Any of this which is not being performed leads to violation of the act.
Yeah.
Great. We understood how the notice is done, how this is done, but what exactly happens in a consent management life cycle? Because this is going to change the way India is going to consume personal data. Everyone now has to understand what are the different collection points. If it's a physical journey, banks have to figure out how to enable the phygital journey. How do you convert the data, what you take, Xerox copies? Interesting piece is this is Digital Personal Data Act. That means everything under digital is covered. That also means that physical personal data of Xerox copies are kept outside. But the moment the Xerox copy is scanned and uploaded inside your branch ecosystem, that becomes digital information. And you need to enable consent for this digital journey through different formats. In another interesting piece, if you're having an IVR solution, if you are using personal data to confirm via phone, there also you have to enable consent via IVR consent collection. Consent has been collected. You kept it for some n number of months, years, or until expiry. But every time data gets processed by your downstream systems, it has to validate whether that data can actually be used or whether consent actually exists. What happens if someone comes to a branch and says, I gave you consent for my account opening. Now I also want to understand what insurance or what credit cards am I eligible for? To do that, you need to allow them to modify their last consent preferences. And in case the consent is kind of expiring, there is also an option where you can re-obtain the consent before it's expired. Finally, the biggest thing, as we were discussing, if there is an expiry of the consent, if the data principal comes to your preference and privacy center and says, I no longer want to give you consent, revoke this, or if all of this happens, regulatory requirement, RBI mentions 7 years you have to maintain, or PMNA requirement of 10 years you have to maintain. All of these across all your downstream systems and your vendors has to be properly orchestrated so that the process of withdrawal is smooth. If it is not, if by mistake even a marketing mail goes to them after they have withdrawn, that kind of amounts to violation. They have a right to approach your DPO.
Shashank, I'm pitching here.
Sure,
My
sir.
worry is probably I subscribe to many kind of white papers or some kind of document, and you logged in everywhere. You gave some consent. You accepted some cookies and all, and there is no life cycle. There is no kind of end of life for that. In fact, you don't know whom you have subscribed, where you have shared the data and all. So this withdrawal part of it is that is one of the very critical things in the entire thing. Apart from the consent management, that is the right to withdraw the consent. That is delete the consent. That is important.
Yes, absolutely,
Yeah,
sir. I think
yeah.
consent, as you said, propagation is going to be a very big challenge
Now here
because
I will
it's,
just stop for a while.
yeah,
What is then? What are we talking about? What is PII? This personally identified information, whether it is sensitive or non-sensitive. What are the various kind of like your kind of Aadhaar card, PAN card, mobile number? There are non-sensitive data. Now, what I found is NIST identified even the IP address as a sensitive kind of data. The IP address of a person. Sharing that also could be an issue. Yeah. So go ahead, sir. Sorry for the interruption.
so
And
very,
another
sir,
thing,
very,
we had a
yeah,
small
sure,
question, and
sure,
this
sir.
meeting is being recorded, and Redacto team will, I think, share in the YouTube or send a link to the user. That's what I understand. Yeah, am I correct,
Yes,
sir?
sir.
Yeah,
Yes,
go
sir, you're
ahead.
right.
Go ahead.
Sir, also, I'll just add to your PII point. DPDA did not take a route of PII. Rather, they took much more, if you ask me, brutal way of saying it's personal data.
That's my God. That's much bigger. Personal information is personal data is much bigger an
Exactly.
area. Yeah,
Identifiable is layer two. Layer one
yeah.
itself, they're asking you to go and check.
Because I have some data through which I can be identified, some data which will help me to identify, not directly, but together with something else. So that means
Correct.
it has a bigger NIST se
Correct.
bhi zyada hai. It is more than what
Exactly.
NIST has defined. Yeah.
Exactly.
Probably my request, sir. So this is
Hmm.
a small meeting of 1 hour
Yeah.
with all the learned people sitting here. Definitely, no, you try to share a kind of guide for the entire DPDPA along with some know how to go about it. See, DP ठीक है. Is there a how to make a policy? Policy बनाना है, and उसके लिए एक policy followed by procedures. So if you can share it and in a kind of usable way, that will help save their time and easy to make them easy to understand. It's not that we always receive during these sessions a lot of information. Some gentleman
Sure.
already started one good question. We'll come to that. Whether
Sure.
credit bureaus are no, he's asking how do they come under DPDPA? So, sir, as per the RBI Act, any loan, anybody taking loan has to agree to share the information with the CICs or the credit information bureaus, whatever it is. And these are not like casual credit information center. They're licensed credit bureaus. It's not that anybody can share it. This is there, so credit information is shared. Now the question is whether they are a data processor. They're not data processor. They're only sharing the data. That's what I feel, because they don't give a loan by using the data. It's a great question. It's open for discussion at a later time. Go ahead, sir. Thank you, Agarwal.
We'll cover, sir. I think end of
Yeah,
this, we will have
yeah.
a Q&A.
Go ahead,
We'll
sir. I
answer all
think
the
in the
questions.
interest of the time, let us finish the presentation. Yeah,
So,
thank you.
super, another interesting piece. We were just looking at from a fiduciary point of view. Now, not only from a bankers, all of your bankers, definitely, but also all of you are also data principals,
Yeah,
where even your data is also going out.
my
So there
data.
have
Yeah,
been, so there are 4 rights which has been given to every customer in the country now. Right to information, wherein every customer has a right under Section 11 to understand what data the fiduciary holds, why they hold it, and who do they share it with. You cannot now put it under saying that I cannot tell you which processor you are using. No. Second, they have a right to understand, to correct, and even seek erasure when the purpose is fulfilled for which the services or the goods have been provided for. They have a right to ask for complete erasure. Of course, barring the regulatory requirements, even the entity has to respond to that. Third biggest piece, we know how much favorite ODR is for us, for all the bankers, the topic of ODR. In the similar angle now, grievance redressal has to be set up. In the grievance redressal, the DPO of the company's link, accessibility to the DPO has to be given in notice itself.
Okay.
And in case the DPO is not able to assist, then it has to go to the level of board. In case not, goes to DPD board. In case doesn't, sir, the principal has a right to approach court also because it's an act.
Yeah.
And finally, another very, very important piece is right to nominate. In case there is a death in the family or there is a incapacitation, which your principal cannot, use their rights, they can nominate. And this becomes a very, very important, point.
Yeah, that's a
Of
great thing. The great thing you brought up, Shashank. ऐसा नहीं कि कल का दिन में कुछ हुआ, डेटा प्राइवेसी के नाम में उसका नाम में should not be deprived of the kind of no.
exactly,
Yeah, great.
exactly. So that means the consent management system all should be exhaustive enough to do interlinking, sir. Interlinking of principal to principal who has been nominated. Also, how do you verify that this person is the rightful owner of this nomination? All of this, banks have to take care of this activity. Finally, some 6 pieces before we jump into the next major sector. What will be your obligations? You need to provide a very clear, itemized data types in notice in a very clear language of 22 plus English. Purpose needs to be very, very clear, should be limited to what exactly is required. If you are doing a cross-selling, there is nothing called restriction, but you need to kind of call out. You have to give us right to sell you insurance. You have to give us right to sell you credit cards. Collect only that data which is required. So finally, the security team's wishes are now part of regulation in terms of data minimization. Please collect only that data which is necessary for the purpose. Very interesting assertion which has been also brought in is you need to have accurate and complete information. The data should be complete and it should be up to date. Otherwise, the deliverables may be mismanaged, modifications will be required. DPD also talks about very, very specifically in terms of security safeguards. As sir, you were mentioning, DLP is already there, but DLP alone now will not happen. You need to understand which pipelines from secure design lifecycle to privacy by design. All of these angles, including day-to-day security operations, all of these have to be brought into play. A very major role has been given for breach management and breach notification systems. Because there are stringent timelines on which the breaches have to be, shared with data principals. Each principal needs to be communicated that your data was part of the breach, so and so happened. Information should also go to your board. It should also go to the DPD board. That says this happened. We'll come back with detailed RCA on what went wrong. And more or less, the most important thing is retention. Don't retain if it is not required. Have automations, workflows enabled to maybe have auto
Mm.
purging. In case
Yeah.
it's required by regulatory board to have the data enabled, remove the data from processing from the main services. Have that have some separately enabled. That data also, if required, please tokenize, anonymize, or keep it much more secure. By mistakenly, also, none of your developers can use the data to process something else.
Yeah.
Sir, as you mentioned, definitely the penalty is steep for 250 crore. But just also want to touch base upon this. What I had seen previously and the GDPR also is that it's not about that one Aadhaar card someone found out in someone's endpoint. No, that's not the point.
Mm.
The point is whenever inspection investigation happens, they will understand how systems have been enabled. Did we do a collection point audits? Did you understand what data is being discovered? Did we understand
Yeah.
what vendor has access to the information? The entire personal data flow in terms of lineage
Yeah.
accessed. That is
Shashank,
what.
I'll pitch in here. Like,
Sure, sir.
no, I want to just, like, no, definitely it looks scary. 250 crores, 50 crores. And then if really somebody is fine, it's because understand the DP, what is that? The board is yet to be formed, no? And you cannot blankly say 250 crores. When it comes to GDPR, they have set guidelines, no? A number of incidents, severity of the incidents, and the volume of data shared, and there should be some clear way, like an acceptable metrics for the penalty also. Once the board is formed, board is yet to be formed. After that, all these things will come up. So let's not get scared by this 250 crores. But any small amount of penalty is going to be a huge kind of stigma. So that is what is required. And we have a lot of other channels also as we go by. After you finish, I'll discuss some of the challenges when I'm discussing with various bankers they crop up. Yeah.
So I'll also share one very small information in
Yeah.
this only.
Yeah.
So we also work with a couple of ad tech companies who did a survey recently. It was found out that 71 to 72% of customers will not work with those companies who had a history of data breaches or who mishandled customer data.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
penalty might maybe for a 1 lakh crore balance sheet company, penalty may look small, but it is also the customer trust, reputation, and also how regulators look upon this.
Yeah. Rishak, as you rightly said, no, this is more of trust. Once you lose the trust, you lose because once you are like no, then they can be run on a bank also. And what I
Right.
found recently is the cost of average data breach is about 22 crores.
Yeah.
And the kind of volume in data we store, UPI itself accounts for almost 70 to 80% of the total transaction. Now, somebody is questioning about the credit bureau. Sorry for the little bit of deviation. Similarly, I'm saying many people keep my data, including the payment system. They keep a lot of my data, lot of customer data. For example, NPCI handles the Aadhaar, what we call mapper, you know. So everybody is responsible. Owning data is not a stigma as long as they are authorized. Misusing part are given to somebody to whom is not authorized. That is the worst part. That's fair. And there are challenges. Once we finish it, what are the various challenges in the journey? We'll briefly cover. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
So as I mentioned, RBI kind of came out with the new revised master directions in 2025 November. We have done a detailed map up. This is just the overall understanding how that kind of works. But data privacy obligations, if you read them in detail, you will understand that RBI has already kind of enabled. As I said, it's the embedded privacy what RBI has taken a direction with. That means if you're into digital lending, it has already been called out that it needs an explicit consent for data collection. It needs to be only
Yeah.
need basis, no access to phone resources. If someone is not paying, consent is not there, you can't access their contacts to call them, call their relatives that hey, your guy did not pay off loan. Again, outsourcing guidelines have been almost very nicely refined to bring in data as a central point on how service provider access to. It should be need to know access only, and breach reporting still, is in line with what MITI has given 6 hours. Privacy policies have to be, now have the traces of something called responsible business, so that the customer grievances, compensations are kind of handled in a very clear
Yeah.
patterns. Uh, Customer information needs to be confidentially kept, coming back to credit cards and debit cards. Again, without explicit consent, nothing can be shared. KYC
Yeah.
directions, RBI has already worked extensively in MD KYC. Wonderful regulations are available. They've also given now clear directions on how OTP-based eKYC restrictions kind of come into play, how VSIP standards kind of work.
Yeah.
And finally, the most interesting question is about credit information. Uh,
Yeah.
Expectation now is that there's a standardized reporting, high confidentiality about data cannot be
See, this is
reused.
what Sir Mr. Aditya, somebody is asking. Ensure any implication for credit bureaus? Will credit bureaus be impacted with notice? Do they need to give notice to the what that kind of question is there? I think they are only holding the data; they are not processing the data. So whatever fiduciary and they're authorized to receive data. Not that every credit bureau is authorized, right? That's what I feel. Anyway, a good point to note, and we'll deliberate on it later. Go ahead.
Also, if you see at a very high level, whatever RBI has mandated, we also did a mapping wherein, for
Oh,
example, when RBI says data collection must be in need basis with explicit consent, that's exactly what
okay.
DPD also says, Section 5, Section 6. Purpose
Yeah,
limitation, informed consent. DLAs cannot store phone contacts, call logs, files, media. Absolutely, that matches with your Section 6 of minimization requirements of DPDA.
yeah,
So, overall, if you see what RBI has done, there is nothing which is saying that, DPDA calls separately.
yeah,
That also means that forget about 15 months, 18 months and all. RBI has already kind of mandated how it expects personal data of its end customers to be utilized. And we'll be more than happy. We will be sending all of you the mapping sheet, what we have done with all the required documents of RBI to DPDA, so that you have a unified compliance framework. One shot you enable so that tomorrow when inspections happen in your area, you can
yeah,
actually say, with this one consent management platform, with this one privacy governance, we take care of multiple different regulations, directions, as well as the act.
yeah.
Main point of the agenda, we spoke a lot about legally how it's going to happen, but what happens do we do from compliance and how do we make it to operation? It's interesting and how it's going to play out. First and foremost, sir,
Yeah, go ahead.
everyone has to
Yeah,
do something called a DPDA gap assessment. You
yeah.
need to
You're giving the
understand.
roadmap for that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
We'll be sharing that also. There's a
yeah,
beautiful document we wrote
yeah.
on the number of days, number of months, what are the steps. It's a 40-pager document. We'll be sharing
Great.
that after this call with all the audiences who
Go,
have joined us today.
words.
A technical workshop wherein you kind of understand, as sir said, what is the data residing inside your ecosystem. But before that, you also need to understand what are your collection points. How many different digital, mobile, web, physical, or even in telephony, where do you actually collect your personal data? How is it being used? What is the purpose? And where does this go? Once
So,
this happens, you need to kind of reframe your enterprise frameworks on consent, on data,
no.
confidentiality, write detailed SOPs, have policies enabled. Another good news, we have worked with Sir. We'll be sharing a link for all of you who are there in a call, some 30 plus documents, which are pre-written in form of whatever is DPD requiring. But these two are the initial set of activity which will be expected
Yeah,
to be done in gap assessments.
yeah,
Now comes the fun piece of how do we do this technically.
yeah,
You need to enable, number one, a notice management system, a system which is foolproof, which kind of maintains with audit trail notices. Just to make you understand, the notice in all the languages, including the MP3 files, which you'll be using for physically disabled customers, all of
yeah,
them have to be predetermined to be stored. And that notice has to be linked with the consents what you are consuming. Even if one word of the notice is changed, that will lead to a new version of the notice to be published. That means number one, you need to have a notice management system, you need to have a consent management system, and this consent management system needs to talk to all of the downstream systems, including your own services, applications, also the data processor of the vendors who are kind of using your information.
Okay.
Second, the data is entered, so it is in your ecosystem now. You need to have the data discovery and data auto classification systems enabled. Sir, after you do this activity for the first time, people think we
Yeah.
will do once and we'll forget. You need to have an ongoing, continuous monitoring capabilities also.
Yeah, what I understand, Shashank, as you said, no, data discovery is not one time. It's kind of you keep on discovery. It's not. It doesn't have at least
Right.
critical data. You sensitive. You identify. Then start improving on that. Meanwhile, build the other things. Right. That's what we.
Correct. So also it's
What I
important.
found in other areas in the entire system is this data discovery is a bigger job. How to really work on, apart from the consent. One thing you have covered already, messaging and consent management. That is a bigger job, but data discovery parallelly goes. Or you want to say after this, after sending notices?
Yes, I will. Yeah. So another, sir, as you said, the third major point is to kind of assess. You also need to have a register which identifies and keeps in tab every process of every user flow of every product in your bank. That kind of behaves like a central inventory for all the
Okay.
purposes for
Okay.
which personal data is being collected.
Hmm.
Now, when we do all of this, definitely there is something called a DPIA, a privacy impact assessment needs to be done. Specifically for SDFs, it's compulsory. Annually, all the SDFs have to do the significant data fiduciary. We are not yet there on who will be called as SDF, but overall, the whole point is going forward, any new product launch, any new requirement, there needs to be a privacy impact assessment to be done just to understand what this personal data is being consumed for, what is the requirement, why do we need it, and how long we have to store, who will have access to this information, which vendor will have this information. And sir, the biggest problem statement will not be discovery, sir. I'll tell you the biggest problem will be consent propagation to vendor, right? But sir, every time a new vendor is onboarded, you need to enable that vendor with a new flow also.
Yeah. Correct.
That means if you are onboarding even one vendor per week, IT team's job is only to kind of understand how
Yeah,
to
we have
create this
multiple,
propagation.
more than 100 vendors typically for any bank. Yeah.
And if those vendors are rotated, sir, if you change your credit agency from A to B, you need to kind of rejig the APIs, the webhooks, so that the propagation happens. And this is every single time the new vendors come into play. And that brings us to the point, sir, vendor risk management. Vendor risk, not only from DPDA, outsourcing guidelines have become very stringent now. For cooperative banks, for even commercial banks, payment systems, RBI is not only looking from a DPDA angle, outsourcing angle, but sir, there's also the CSF angle. The cybersecurity frameworks are into play now. Individual banking regulations are coming into play. That means now holistically vendors have to be evaluated with much more rigor, much more diligence.
Yeah, Shashank, you have any profiling, vendor profiling activity kind of thing, or only?
No, absolutely, sir. So for Redacto, so we are agentic fully. So we also do diligence. That means we also not only do information security, but we also work with MCS APIs. Any cases against the vendor, their directors, any past issues, everything is brought into play.
Most of the banks profile the vendors with a given experience with them, not like from the overall. That kind of, you see, even RBI mandated that kind of vendor risk management. It's not just the risk I bear, overall how they are, what is the profile in the industry. Yeah.
Correct.
Go ahead,
I
sir.
mean, you're right, sir. That's the reason why we don't want any bank to do it two times, one for DPDA, one for RBI.
Yeah.
Another big piece, all these customers will come to your privacy center and apply for grievances or requests. That means there has to be an automated workflows for whatever consents they gave. whatever data is inside
That
sitting,
is the grievance
and
redressal mechanism. Yeah, that's for
mechanism.
the.
Also, the data subjects access rights or
Now,
DPAR, what we call.
ideally, sir, it should be integrated with my. If at all somebody is having, can it be integrated with the CRM, existing CRM? Again, yeah,
Absolutely,
that
sir.
would be a better idea instead of
Hmm.
rediscovering something. At least the
Absolutely,
workflow
sir.
will be done.
Easier. Yes.
Yeah.
So whatever CRM companies have, sir, we kind of work with them to have a identity layer also get created.
Okay.
So that
Great.
every time you come and add, so we kind of figure out, okay, Butchi Babu sir is not only using this, but he's also using this.
Okay.
And another interesting topic is, sir, breach notification. Breaches have to be informed when the breach has happened. Also, the RCA. That means the breach system also should be integrated with the SOC and the SIM of the bank. And also through any other information, should be very modular enough to kind of get all this information and inform the CISO and the DPO together.
Hmm.
And finally, is the data exit. Whether after the whole purpose is over, whether you retain this for any RBS requirement or you want to go and purge this. So just to again, kind of thing, if you have seen, sir, this is the entire personal data lifecycle what we have
Great.
covered.
The journey is clear. Yeah.
Journey, and this is what DPDA kind of expects. Just to add, Redacto kind of covers each of these module one by one to kind of give a unified platform experience so
Great.
that every data principles request from a fiduciary point of view is kind of taken care holistically.
Yeah.
So, sir, in just 2 minutes, I'll also say, how do we help? We not only do digital, but we also help with digital journeys. That means the major problem statement will be from the branches, wherein the branch manager or the DSRs or the VCs, they have to work together. And that's where we make not only IVR consents, but also the digital journeys more seamless. Customers get single privacy control center. There are privacy SDKs. Without changing the UI, UX of the bank, this kind of goes and sits behind
I think
bank's privacy.
you meant to say the banks are when you say customers, the organization. Yeah.
So banks, customers.
Regulated entities are customers.
So these are customers who need to get access to their information. So what do? We did not bring them to say our portal. We have privacy SDKs. That means nothing changes for bank in the same login through SSO of the bank that can go to the bank's website and they can understand what data has been given by them in consents. It's very important for everyone that all the DSARs also follow a workflow pattern, cannot be manual, sir. On a day-to-day basis, there will be a lot of requirements.
Shashank, no acronyms. Yeah. No acronyms.
My bad. So apologies. So
for me, it is a direct selling agent, the kind of report. Yeah, tell me.
So these are the access requests which the principals will be making. This is a global word, my bad, but it's called the data principal or the data subjects requests. What are being asked, the right to forget, right to modify, right to create. And all of this, sir, has to be automated in a traceable workflow. And the biggest piece, which GDPR or anyone else doesn't mandate much, but because of DPDA, is the vendor risk. There is a heightened requirement that kind of vendors to be in continuous monitoring. And finally, sensitive data should be identified where it actually lives. So, sir, basically, the compliance moves now from entire regulation documentation to systems through automations. And no matter what, there has to be auditable, immutable evidences available for both DPDA and RBI whenever inspections or a call is done to show the evidences. So with your permission, the final 90-day plan. All of you who are in this call, I think this is what we have been seeing also. What happens when you go back on Monday morning to your office? You need to kind of, enable, or you can ask us, we can also enable this in terms of training. This training should be for everyone, from peon of that branch to the leadership. Everyone should understand how DPDA is going to change the way they handle customers' data. You also need to, if it's technology available, fantastic. Manually, please go ahead, you need to start doing something called a personal data inventorization. What does it do? It will help you to understand how data is collected, why it is being collected, where it is being kept, and who is processing. Need to figure out all the vendors, processors, shadow vendors. Mind you, there are also a lot of vendors who may not be coming through, security domain, but they have access to a lot of information. Part of procurement team's agenda, part of finance team is paying off. Or we have seen in our examples where in a non-stringent environments, employees kind of access to single sign-on and go and create something, a login in ChatGPT and start using it. That means all the shadow vendors also need to be identified, even if employees are paying from their own pocket to use that, because there is the chance that data might be going there. And the board has to be briefed about DPD applications. Once you cross this, you need to understand your user journeys will change. Till date, you have been consuming one tick box with a very holistic say, I agree. No longer no longer it will work. You need to have a consent collection mechanism for all the touch points. Might be account opening, you're giving loans, cards, digital banking, physical bankings, selected languages. So Redacto also has partnered with agency, which can also not only translate, but they have people who can understand those words and give you legally whether they're right or wrong. Because here, protected languages, pure translation won't work. The translation also should stand legally if a scrutiny happens, because that's where people are giving consents. Plan a grievance mechanism. All of these happens, we need to kind of enable a continuous flow with your core banking system so that from the start of your DSS journey goes into your lending app, core banking apps, the workflows down to downstream system. Need to set up breach notification detection centers. You may have SOC, you may have SIM. Fantastic. Here and there, fine tuning has to happen so that it can talk to a breach notification. Because here, when you work with SOC is more from every log, every possible log, WAF application, even system logs. But for this, we need logs from a personal data point of view. After everything is done, setup is done. Congratulations. You need to kind of go back and do a complete DPDA readiness assessment so that when actual inspection will happen from the regulator, it might be 100 questions, 200 questions. For every question, there should be an answer that we have this system enabled. This is the SOP, and it's not person driven. Just final two slides. We are way short of our time, but 13th November, the rules were finally published. November 28th, RBI gave their guidelines for cooperative banks. More than 20 were issued in terms of revised directions. Both dates have crossed. Just to give one heads up to all of you, April 10th, 2026, the IT outsourcing guidelines go into effect with the revised this thing. In case you have not heard about that or if you have somewhere got missed out, we will be sharing some of these documentations. Please go through because that has a lot of flavor about how RBI has rejigged a couple of requirements. And finally, May 27, when it started, it was 18 months. As we said, now it's close to 15 months. By May 27, you have to be fully compliant with that diagram where we saw the journey of personal data lifecycle. And just a very interesting announcement. We are working with Butchi sir. And for all the participants who are out here, we have created 30 plus documentations for all of you. That means it will cover consent management framework, your SOPs from a DSAR point of view, DPR point of view. And also we wrote a very interesting two documents where you can also send this to your CIO and CTOs, much more in terms of tech. And the second document is in terms of architecture. So that how does CTO has to look upon DPDA, because DPDA is more a technical implementation. That means your entire tech team or your tech implementers also have to be aligned with what the technology requirements are there. And another interesting thing, along with sir, we have also opened, you can go to dpda.info, where we will be sharing, we are already sharing a lot of information. You can also check your readiness assessments. And in case you are interested, please ping us. We will add you to that also. We really want this to be a community-driven website where Redacto will take care of all the infra costs and hosting requirements. Even if you see now, it's nothing from Redacto's point of view. We just power it. But it's Butchi sir who is mentoring us to have that page, so that as we work, we'll also come with specific use cases. As and more, sir, edge cases, we will also understand. So, simple example I'll give you before closing this. What happens when a child converts from 17 years, 364th day, he becomes 18th year and becomes a major? How will the consent change from child consent to a major consent? So like this, edge cases is something also we'll keep on hosting it there. We'll also bring in legal experts also who will be giving their opinions. Sir, our point of view is that dpda.info should be the single central information hub where all of us should share our information.
We need a lot of input from the experts in the banking, right? That will help us. It's a collective wisdom. That's what we're looking at.
Exactly, sir.
Yeah.
And I close this with last 20 seconds.
Yeah.
We're already working
one or two questions I found was like, no. One
yes,
question
sir.
is
this is the last slide. After this, we will open up the Q&A. Why Redacto? We're a full stack privacy platform built for specifically regulated sectors. Very interesting thing. We are a full stack privacy company, sir. That means there is nothing which we deal into KYC data, transaction data. Our company is only focused on privacy, and that's what we had to solve. And companies have to understand if there are other entities who are doing KYC and all, there is a processor who is also doing consent management, kind of becomes a conflict, and we don't do any of those. Just another information, we are finalists in the MITI Code for Consent Challenge. That means, Redacto, whatever we do is already aligned with MITI BRD and the app. We're already working with India's largest payment entities, leading NBFCs, and there are a lot of POCs we are doing. What does it mean is that we already know how much engineering efforts are required. We as founders also, we have worked engineering at scale. Since it's very important for you also to work with those entities who understand how to build systems at scale. Finally, as you understood, we not only cover DPDA, but we also take care of RBI requirements so that you have a unified view. So this is the parting question or parting answer I have, that when everything goes live, I think the question will be, can you pull up any customer's consent historically, instantly, when a mail from regulator comes? And can that be shared within a span of hours? That's the journey which, every bank has to cover. And we are here, sir. Thank you. Thank you for being such a wonderful. And so now we can enable the Q&A.
Yeah, please. I think already one or two questions are waiting. One is about what is the other 50 crores? What is the penalty? Second thing is about, I found one or two interesting questions. The vendor breach notification timeline, my personal opinion, because if any breach is a violation security, it should, depending on the severity, it is either 6 hours or 72 hours, depending on any other cybersecurity incident. That's what I feel. That was one of the questions, right? And what about are you helping somebody already in any payment system?
Yes, sir. So we are working with two of the biggest payment companies in the country already.
Okay.
Sir, I'll start reading the questions. I think Ravi sir
please
start. If consent purpose is over, but data is retained for RBI purpose, is DPD Act violated? Sir, absolutely not. Sir, if I'll just repeat the question. Consent purpose is over, but RBI mandates you to keep that. Then, sir, you need to kind of remove that data from that processing cycle and keep it separately. Only when you use that for processing, you're violating. If not, you need to retain that separately under the RBI guidelines. That means, so the point is, your regulatory requirements also kind of take precedence, but doesn't mean that you will be processing that information. Uma sir is asking, is RHFL need to implement DPD Act? Sir, is it, sorry, what is the full form for RHFL? Not able to get, but team, can you just, Harsha, can you just Google RHFL and give me a response on that?
Is it FL or EL?
It's
RHEL or
FL.
FL? No, RHEL is
FL.
Red Hat.
Aditya sir is asking that erasure, any implication for credit bureaus, will credit bureaus be impacted with notice? Sir, it's a great point. I think Butchi sir also has mentioned. I'll just give you some practical thing. What will happen is, sir, credit bureaus also need to work with the banks, because the entry point is the bank. So definitely you'll be a processor in bank's notice. But there's a second angle to this is, in case credit bureau is doing something over and above also, but what bank has sought the notice, if your purpose is different, then definitely you will also fall under fiduciary angle, and you need to kind of work out with your upstream systems on how they want to categorize this. So my plain response is, you will be a fiduciary and you will be a processor. It will depend on what case-to-case basis, which you have to talk to your fiduciaries. Again, IT sir has asked, is there also a need to get assurance audit certification done at design stage? Since the DPDA law is new, it will be helpful to have assurance certification done. So there is no mandate per se if you're not an SDF to have a DPIA to be enabled. But you're absolutely right. Since the law is new, you may work back with any of these certain empaneled auditors, because they're under MITI, to kind of get any sort of assurance certification. In case that can be a very preparedness report, that can be any other, if you want to fall under ISAE or AICPA guidelines also, you can also map it against some of the assertions of SOC 1 and get that. Not compulsory, but definitely worthy to have this. Second thing is, sir, if you are a processor, I mean, who are not bank here and folks maybe from processor also, you may be required to do, because some of fiduciaries may ask you as part of your vendor onboarding for you to submit some assurance reports that the data what is going inside your systems is secure, foolproof, and it's privacy by design. Satyanarayan sir is saying, is May 2027 applicable to all BFSI units too? Sir, it's applicable to everyone. Every single entity which is processing personal data, it's applicable to everyone to be done.
Shashank, I want to pitch in here. Am I audible?
Sure, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Basically, it is not for banks or NBFCs. It is for anybody who is processing digital personal data for other than personal purpose. It is applicable to anybody. It's not for bankers only. Yeah.
Correct. And Satyanarayan sir again has asked, can Redacto conduct trainings to the banks? Absolutely, sir. We can do much more than training. We can do technical workshops also. We can talk to your tech teams to kind of understand the flow and give them a lot of guidance. Krishna Chaitanya sir is asking, who should be DPO in the bank? So there are specific guidelines on how reporting of DPO structuring has been given for SDF, wherein DPO has to be independent, report to the board and all. But typically, if you take a balance with, say, GDPR, DPO can be either the GC or CISO, or anyone
mostly from the CISO.
CISO, or anyone who kind of understands how risk profiling is done. Because DPO will become the single most important role once the DPDA, kind of is fully implemented. Because DPDO, surprisingly or unsurprisingly, will be responsible for personal data governance inside the banks. Uma sir, so yes, Repco Finance, absolutely. Then it's under NBFC guidelines. It has to implement the DPD Act. So Nilesh sir is asking, I think second question, what happened when consent for data is withdrawn and data is required for loan purpose? So sir, in case consent is withdrawn and the loan KYC and the loan RBI is still there and the service is still being maintained, you need to kind of send them back as saying that the consent cannot be withdrawn currently because the service is in progress. and the withdrawal will take effect once the service has been delivered, and this has been categorically called out in the rules itself. And finally, I think Balakrishna said, what is the impact DPDA make on RTI? Little touchy topic. I think there is a lot to discuss about RTI, but in general, since we are talking from a financial institutions and businesses as a whole, all have to kind of mandatory implement rules to have this DPD enabled. I will not go much more deeper into RTI because it's kind of still government is deliberating on how to enable RTI Act on the DPDA without hammering the right to information which every citizen has. Hanumanta sir, sir, you want to take up also some of these questions?
What is that?
Hanumanta sir is saying if it is recommended to have a separate consent management system and integrate all other applications to this.
No, consent management cannot be, for me, it should not be ultimately to the PII, personal information. It should be a unified consent management, as it suggested.
Right.
I cannot have
Correct.
multiple, maybe the channels may be different, receiving channels, but the aggregation point is there. That's what
Integration has to happen.
that helps me in
Correct.
deduplication and cleansing of data also, because I would have recorded something else in some other place and here some other place. Thanks for that. Yeah.
Rajendra sir is saying, hi, for conducting DPDA gap assessments, is there a guideline on who is eligible to conduct DPD assessments? For example, IS audit certain empaneled requirement likewise. Sir, currently, no. There are no specific call-outs. But definitely, since again, is a good guess only. From my personal thing is, certain empanel will kind of work out because certain again reports back to MITI. And also they will be following DPDA Act and rules to perform an assessment on you. And him or her being a CISA plus lawyer plus whatever is the firm kind of adds that value. Tejas sir is saying like all organizations, private or public, will come on DPDA. Will government bodies consume our data? So great question, Tejas sir. Specific exemptions have been given in the Act on whom DPDA is not applicable. Yeah. For example, for ration delivery, right? If someone has to give you a government services, which is under a ration card, then they will not wait for you to give a consent and you cannot say, I'll withdraw my consent. If your services, it might be government also, if it is not falling under those specific exemptions, DPDA applies to you. So great thing what government has done is they have given one, small negative list. If this negative list is taken care, rest for all, it kind of comes into play. Another example I'll give you is child consent. Child consent we have discussed a lot.
Yeah.
But in case a newly born child in a maternity ward, you cannot wait for him to give you consent, or you cannot wait for guardian consent to happen that time. So like that, exemptions have been provided. If that particular, maybe even say, for example, RTO office for some requirements falls under the exemption, then definitely you don't need that. But if it is not falling part of that negative listing, everyone, including your electricity board also, who is consuming information, has to be done. The last final question from Ravi sir: can principal withdraw consent for core functionality of bank for which prior consent was taken? Butchi sir.
No, consent, what is the core functionality in the sense? Basically, either you give consent or you don't consent. As a principal, as a producer, I can see your data. Only thing I cannot share your data, right? What is the consent for core function? What probably I understand is no more use my data. I think producer has the right as per the regular, he can retain the data, but for third party purposes, sharing purposes, what I feel is he can withdraw the consent. But, as you said, we have to keep for a particular time also, number of years to the data and all, even after the consent is removed. I maybe that is how I understood that.
I'll just add, sir, to your point also. If the consent is mandate for providing that service to the customer, then the consent cannot be withdrawn in between. And that's the call which banks have to take on how to, create those consent withdrawal mechanisms.
Yeah.
And Amrita madam is saying, can you please share the PDFs you had mentioned? Absolutely, madam. To all who have registered, we'll be sending those list of
So,
PDFs copies.
my request is to Redacto is in the website, whatever is possible, even in the YouTube, put a link to lead to these documents. Like, no, when you're publishing in the YouTube, keep a link to so that it's easy. And also look for a lot of inputs from the experienced bankers because it is evolving. There are more questions than answers. There are many questions as we go by. Because of the paucity of time, then I interacted with 4 banks discussing the challenges. We have challenges. We'll come over as we discuss, right? That as we interact and thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you all for the lovely participation. One of the lovely interactive sessions.
Thank you everyone. And no, sir, thanks, sir, for honoring us by coming here.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone for being patient for last 1 hour. Just to tell you, I was I was hurrying. My bad. But we have so much to cover, and this is a huge topic. And really look forward to connecting with all of you in person if given chance, so that we can discuss in much more detail with you in workshops. Thank you.
I have a few people interacted. You can take their help also. Sachinarana, Reddy sir, Agarwal, whoever is more kind, you can take their help in improving things. Thank you, sir.
Sure, sir. Thank you, and have a great weekend. See you soon.
Bye.
Thank you.